I was visiting online via YouTube a church that I'm familiar with in London, and it was really interesting because they were asking their parishioners what their vision was for their local parish coming out of COVID-19 lockdown. And I listened to these responses, and they were generally pretty good. They wanted to see more fellowship and more interaction in the parish and more reaching out to the community, which are all very admirable. And it made me think, and I looked through some of my notes that I've made previously, and I realized I'd come up with this definition myself of what I want to see coming out of lockdown. And this is kind of like my mission statement, if you like. And what I wrote, I think I wrote this last month sometime: a community that recognizes her heavenly identity and builds upon it through ministry in the homes of the faithful. And I probably shared that on one of these videos last month or so, but it bears repeating. A community that recognizes her heavenly identity and builds upon it through ministry in the homes of the faithful. So very briefly today, I'd like to take a look at what this heavenly identity that I'm talking about could be. And I'm glad you asked me, because today we remember Saint Bonaventure. And so some of you thought I wasn't going to bring in today's memorial, but I am bringing it back to the lectionary today. Saint Bonaventure was born in Bagnoregio in Italy. Peter, who knows Italian very well, will be able to correct me on that one next time we meet on Zoom. He was a medieval Franciscan. Now, just to put it in perspective, he was 5 years old when St. Francis died. So he wouldn't have probably known him personally, obviously, but he was a Franciscan following in the footsteps of St. Francis of Assisi. And apparently when he was very young, he had a near-death experience. And he's a doctor of the church, and it's thought actually, for all of his great work and his writings and his nurturing of the Christian faith, it's possible it might have been poisoned. But anyway, people aren't sure about that, but he died in 1274. And today's reading for the memorial, the first reading is Ephesians chapter 3, verse 14 to 19, which brings us right back to our heavenly identity. So I'm going to read out of the New Jerusalem Bible, and if I can find it here, I'm just going to read a part of it, okay, because I want to keep this short. I don't want to bore you to tears, as I have been doing my 15-minute talks over the last few weeks, okay. And it's chapter 3, I'm going to read verse 16 and a bit of 17. Here we go. In the abundance of his glory, may he, through his Spirit, enable you to grow firm in power with regard to your inner self, so that Christ may live in your hearts through faith. I could read the whole chapter, I could read the whole book. I love the book of Ephesians. I think it is probably my favorite book in the Bible, as well as the Gospels, as well as the book of Acts, as well as the whole Bible. But there you are. Verse 16, I'm going to read it again to you. In the abundance of his glory, may he, through his Spirit, so the Lord Jesus Christ by his Spirit, enable you, that's you and me, enable you to grow firm in power with regard to your inner self, that interior life, that is the engine room of our faith, if you like, so that Christ may live in your hearts, may live in our hearts, your heart and my heart, through faith. So, This is the journey of faith that we have, and this is the riches of the glory that Christ offers to us and gives to us. And this is why I say that let us have that firm knowledge of that inner interior life of Christ and express it not in isolation but in community. In what better place than when, of course, when we gather as the church and celebrate the liturgy, but also in our homes, in our households, in the domestic church where we can invite friends. And one thing I've not mentioned much actually in the past few months is the ministry of hospitality. And I think when we understand that the book of Acts, when they first were gathering from home to home and meeting in the temple courts, and they shared their food with gladness and simplicity of heart, they were exercising the ministry of hospitality. And perhaps that's what we need to refresh ourselves in, coming out of lockdown, where we've not been able to be hospitable very much. We haven't been able to invite people to our homes, but now perhaps we can take that nugget, that beauty of hospitality, and begin to take it seriously. Perhaps we call it intentional hospitality, and a hospitality that's focused on Jesus Christ and nurturing that inner life that Saint Bonaventure points us all to today. I hope this has helped you. Thank you so much for watching. This is John Ruffle for Shalom Charismatic Community in Birmingham, England.